I want to ask you guys a question. When you think about cybersecurity threats, what image springs to mind? Do you picture hooded hackers in dimly lit rooms, surrounded by monitors, running sophisticated scripts and programs? Do you picture white collar office workers sipping on a cup of coffee while entering their same 8-character password for 10 different applications? Do you picture your office receptionist on Facebook inadvertently giving out personal information that can be used to crack security questions in seemingly harmless quizzes? Or do you picture entire companies' lackluster security systems and processes that are poorly enforced? For most of us, the first scenario readily jumps to mind. We often see cybersecurity as a technology issue and mistakenly believe that hackers have access to superior programs that our computer defenses can't withstand. But that's usually not the case. You see, the great thing about computers is that they're predictable. Computers do what they're programmed to do all day, every day, which is why well configured cybersecurity systems seldom fail from a technology standpoint. Humans, on the other hand, are much more volatile. They react differently depending on a range of circumstances: how tired they are, how frustrated they are, how distracted they are. All these factors directly contribute to the level of cybersecurity risk posed by people in our organizations, posed by every single one of us. According to a study by IBM, human error is the main cause of 95% of cybersecurity breaches. This can be as simple as using the same password or clicking on a link without checking its source. One moment of inattention, one small slip up, can have disastrous consequences and bring down an entire company or an institution. That's why cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. To show you just how easily we can slip up and how disastrous the consequences can be, I'd like you to picture the following scenario. It's just another seemingly regular Wednesday morning at the office. You've just come back from a big team meeting about an upcoming project. You're deep in thought as you return to your desk and check your emails, as you always do around this time. You click through them and adding notes to your mental to do list as you go when you come across one from your boss asking you to urgently look into the attached account files because he suspects an error. You open the attachment, eager to see what's going on and to give boss the cause of concern. And then it happens. By the time you realize that you've fallen to a targeted phishing attack, the malware has already infected the company's network drive. All the files in the network are encrypted by the malware. A ransom request follows. The hacker is demanding $100,000 for the decryption key. This kind of scenario occurs about 4,000 times per day worldwide. And there are many other mistakes we as humans make that can lead to severe cybersecurity breaches. Any unintentional action or lack of action that causes, spreads, or allows a security breach to take place. Today, I want to talk about the 4 mistakes we see people and companies make when it comes to their cybersecurity, and more importantly, what you can do about them. Because cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. Let's start by looking at the first mistake, which is to aim for 100% security. Although this sounds good in theory, striving for perfectionism can often lead us to focus on the wrong things, which in turn exposes us to vulnerabilities. Besides, there is no way that 100% security can be achieved. The only way to stay safe online is to fight against your invisible enemy, is to manage risks effectively. And the best way to protect yourself and your business against cyber attack is to be prepared and proactively plan your countermeasures to defeat the attackers. Sun Tzu, the author of Art of War, said, "If you know the enemy and yourself, you need not to fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy or know yourself, you will succumb in every battle." If you apply this saying to cybersecurity, knowing your enemy means being aware of any vulnerabilities that are present. And knowing yourself means having a process and a plan in place to minimize exposures before they occur. You can only win this battle by building cybersecurity from the start and making it everyone's responsibility. Let me give you an example to illustrate my point. In a business environment, Things are constantly changing. There are regular software updates, new patches being released, new personnel being onboarded, and so on. This is a risk you need to manage. I recall a scenario in which an organization patched most of its security vulnerabilities, but while troubleshooting a server, the admin accidentally sent a shutdown command, which inadvertently shut down a large number of servers. These servers were used by organizations' clients, and it took about seven hours before things were up and running again. Both the organization and its clients suffered a serious outage, which not only harmed the organization financial position but also their reputation. So, what can we learn from this situation? I'd say the biggest takeaway is to have a fail safe backup plan in place to forego this type of human error. Specifically, I'd suggest implementing a process where any action related to sensitive data or assets requires the review and approval of another team member. For example, if a user runs a sensitive command or merges a PR, the merge request should go to the admins for approval before the merge is carried out. This will help identify any bugs or faulty patches, and if bugs are found, the merge can be declined and can stop the code to go to the production, because cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. The second mistake we often come across is an over reliance on technology. Many businesses believe that if they invest in the best technology, then they're safe. But we often see that this isn't the case. Even organizations with the best technology and tools that money can buy are not necessarily shielded from cyber attacks. Because no matter which technology you use, if your people are not skilled and trained in using them, the chances of suffering a security breach are very high. Technology alone will not shield you from cyber attacks. Instead, you need the people in your organization to understand the technology and use it effectively to ward off attacks. Because effective cybersecurity is less dependent on technology and more dependent on people. Don't get me wrong, tools are very necessary and can be great starting point to achieve basic security, but the human factor is and remains the weakest link in relation to security, both for IT professionals and the end user. Investing in the best tools will only safeguard an organization when the people understand their roles and responsibilities in keeping their networks safe. Let's understand this from another example. We recently came across an organization who used some of the best in class tools for vulnerability assessment. The tool conducted a security assessment on every website or feature they created. But they later discovered a hack in which a few internal files were exposed to the public. These files contained sensitive information about clients, which again hugely damaged the company's reputation. When we conducted an audit, we discovered that the attack was caused by a horizontal privilege escalation vulnerability in which a normal user was able to escalate his privilege as the admin. This vulnerability was overlooked by the tool. And because the professional relied completely on the tools, they completely missed it. This goes to show that having the best in class tools doesn't automatically make you safe. I've worked with small to enterprise sized companies across the globe, and I always advise them not to be over reliant on technology or tools. Instead, I often suggest conducting a manual assessment because humans can find things like business logic flaws that tools miss. For companies who lack the human resources for a manual assessment, I recommend taking an alternative approach that combines manual and automated methods. For example, scanning the entire application first with automated tools and then engaging a third party vendor like SecurityLit to conduct a gap analysis and penetration tests to find any loopholes. Because often a human eye can pick up on things that cannot be seen by a tool, and cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. Another common mistake I've seen in infosec industry is that people seem to have this thing in mind that their tools should be superior to those of hackers. And although I think it is good to understand how attackers target us and what technology they use, I don't believe that we can simply outtech them. Instead, to be safe in the long run, your security approach should be determined by your attack surface, how complex it is, what assets you have that needs protection from attackers, and so on. I'm not denying how important it is to stay up to date with the methods and tools being used in cyber attacks. With constantly evolving threats, we need to stay on the ball. But it is equally important for company management to adopt a flexible, proactive, and strategic approach to cybersecurity. The security policies of a company need to prioritize investment into critical asset protection rather than the latest technology or system to detect every niche threat. As a business, you should be doing regular evaluation of IT controls and people using the technology. From an ROI point of view, a company should evaluate which parts are critical to continuity and spend security on those elements. How can you do this? By investing in your people and culture. Statistics have shown that an organization can significantly improve its cybersecurity and reduce the risk of a successful cyber attack by just training your people right. Much of human error results from end users simply not knowing what the right course of action is in the first place. For example, users that aren't aware of the risk of phishing are far more likely to fall for phishing attempts, and someone who doesn't know about the risk of public Wi Fi networks will quickly have their credentials harvested. A lack of knowledge is almost never the fault of the user, but should be addressed by the organization to ensure their end users have the knowledge and skills they are required to keep themselves and the business safe. Let me share a story of a breach that could have been avoided by following a few simple steps. Do you remember the employee I mentioned at the start? Using the same password all over the place? Well, he's quite real. Let's name him Mark. As it turns out, Mark's lackluster approach to password security provided detrimental for his organization. Although his organization used a bunch of cybersecurity tools like firewalls and other components to protect its infrastructure against attacks, they didn't have any policies in place for their staff. Things like password policies or training them about cybersecurity risks. So, what happened was that Mark worked on crucial infrastructure project during the week and ordered food from a well-known delivery service every weekend. So far, so good. Until one weekend, the website he was using for ordering food was hacked, and his username and password details were leaked. Because he was using the same credentials all over the place, the hackers not only got his credentials for the food delivery site, but they could now also gain access to a server containing sensitive data from Mark's organization. This severe breach could easily have been avoided by implementing and following a password policy and putting two-factor authentication in place. Sometimes it doesn't even require a hack to gain sensitive information. I've seen people writing their usernames and passwords on sticky notes and sticking them to their desktop monitor for all the world to see. And perhaps it's no surprise with the number of passwords we're expected to remember these days. To avoid these kind of issues, consider having password managers to your employees so they can securely manage their passwords. It is also a good idea to remind employees not to take pictures at their workstation because if these are uploaded to social media with a clear view of sticky notes containing credentials, then hackers can easily use those passwords to seize control over various assets. Better yet, companies should implement password policies and guidelines for staff to follow. Like only saving password in password managers and only providing the password to others through the password manager if someone else in the organization needs access, and rotating passwords every 3 to 6 months, and not posting sensitive information on the employee's desk because cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. And that brings me to the last mistake I want to talk about today, which is pigeonholing cybersecurity responsibility. We see this all the time. Companies relying on their IT department, their most tech savvy employees, or even an external provider to safeguard them from the cyber attacks. And while it's certainly a good idea to hire skilled professionals, it is important to embed cybersecurity in your culture rather than just making few people responsible for it. As I say, Cybersecurity is not a department, but an attitude. So instead of relying on a few key people to keep you safe, which often leads to the wider organization not taking responsibility, let's make cybersecurity everyone's responsibility. This means, for example, that cybersecurity should become part of HR policy. It also means that cybersecurity should play a central role when developing new IT systems instead of being merely an afterthought. A security focused culture is the key to reducing human error, which is currently responsible for 95% of breaches. But humans don't have to be the weakest link. If we start taking even the smallest steps towards reducing the human error, it can create huge gains in security. So, how can we do this? Well, the mitigation of human error has to come from two angles: reducing opportunity and educating users. The fewer opportunities there are for error, the less users will be tested for their knowledge. And the more knowledge your users have, the less likely they are to make a mistake even when they come across an opportunity to do so. Let's try to understand this from another example. We recently came across an organization that relied on IT professionals to protect themselves from cyber attacks, but there was no training or awareness among the rest of the company. One day, an employee from the finance department received an email from a sender posing as the company's IT administrator, asking for this person's password to troubleshoot a handful of tasks, as IT admin's password was not working. And because this employee didn't have any cybersecurity awareness, he supplied the password. The attacker, acting as an IT administrator, gained the access to the organization's more than 1K private repositories, which contain sensitive information about their code base, employees, clients, and much more. Another devastating breach that could have easily been avoided if all staff remember what members were trained or made aware of social engineering attacks. To avoid situations like this, anytime a new employee joins, the company should provide onboarding training that makes them aware of cybersecurity risks and tactics and educates them on best practices they should follow, like using a strong password, how to detect a phishing email, password sharing policies, and how to handle sensitive information. That way, they have the tools and knowledge to keep themselves and the organization safe online, because cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. I'm sure you're seeing a pattern here by now. Four very different mistakes: aiming for 100% security, over reliance on tools, trying to out tech hackers, and pigeonholing responsibility, each with potentially disastrous outcomes. And four very different solutions: having a failsafe in place, manually checking tools to pick up on missed flaws, investing in people and culture, and training your employees. But what it always boils down to this: cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. I think it's time that we acknowledge cybersecurity, and small things like having a hard to crack password and using 2FA can reduce the chance of becoming victim to a cyber attack. If you're someone like me having more than 20 passwords, I suggest using passphrases. It is easy for attackers to know my pet's name or my birth date, but it's a little harder for them to guess songs or dialogues from movies that I like. And even if they did guess my password, I still have two-factor authentication in place. You see what I'm trying to say here? We just need to acknowledge cybersecurity and make simple changes around us that will help us and our data secure. The only way for humans to be safe from cyber attack is to act less like a human when we are interacting with technology. Cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility, and anybody can be part of the solution. Investing in tools and technology is important, but empowering your people is equally important, whether it is your people in the workplace or in family. Humans are the key to the solution, and they cannot be replaced by any technology. They can be a solid first and last line of defense if trained right. Small steps toward cybersecurity by each of us will protect us from big cyber attacks, because they only need to win once, but we have to win every time. Thank you.